Okay, here we are together again. Today we're going to talk about economic geography. Combination of economics and geography. A lot of concepts involved in this. Basically, one, who makes the money? Where does the money go? How's the money made? How's the money distributed? And example, let's be studying different trade routes or looking at distribution patterns for major businesses. Like you see these big chain stores, and they'll have periodic warehouses here and there. Basically, those are distribution centers. So, understanding where their customers most likely shop, where most of their stores are, where the most convenient major highways are. That's generally where they're going to use economic geography to decide where they can put their distribution center. And of course, these big businesses, they look at what's selling the most in particular regions? What's selling the least in particular regions? We talked about various sessions here about their local areas that have things that they're more interesting, that they're certain brands that are more popular, certain products that are more popular. Example, you go to the coast, Walmart's will be selling a lot more seafood than they would up here because availability of the seafood, but plus it's just more popular on the coast. Seeing what areas make the most money, see what areas make the least money. Look at the reasons why. Economic geography helps explain those different patterns. But overall, economic geography is the study of how people earn their livings, how they are, how the livelihoods are vary by area, and how economic activities are spatially interrelated. So three big concepts here. To earn their livings, livelihoods vary from area to area. How economic activity is spatially interrelated. For example, yes, what kind of living you earn, it depends on where you're at. You're in Nebraska or Wyoming, you're probably going to be involved in agriculture. Parts of Wyoming, there is a mining industry, but still mostly agriculture. If you sell surfboards, you're probably living on the coast, probably not living in Colorado. But if you want to sell skiing equipment, you're probably living in Colorado or Utah. What's the big industry out here, of course? Oil industry. Still, it's not as big as it was 100 years ago, but there's still a lot of people heavily involved in the oil and gas industry. Still working out in the oil fields, and also a lot of companies involved with selling this in different areas and looking at who they sell to, how they transport these products. that is part of economic geography. Looking at even looking at livelihood by, say, break it down by level of education. Um, you'll see where people are most likely to live. If you have an MBA or master's degrees in finance, something like that, you're probably working in a large city, working for a large financial firm. Bless you. People without very much education probably look working jobs that don't require a lot of skills, probably working in a lot of industrial areas. But there are a lot of different variations here. But all this can help lead to economic planning for a community. Community can see just for one thing, they're trying to build up their economy. They can say, what kind of workforce do we have? That's a big thing among businesses is workforce. Who are you going to get to work for you? And that can make or break a deal whether it's seeing a lure factory to lure a new factory in or not. Do you have the workforce available? You have people who can do the job. You have people who can show up. So come in and say, yes, we have all these people available who can do this, educated this, or educated that. Standard of living. All that again are related to economic activity. Now, such things as cultural considerations, political decisions, technological development, they all affect the economic activity of an area, the choices for individuals. For example, go back to the surfing example. Off the coast of Vietnam, there is a lot of really good waves, a lot of good potential for surfing, but do people go to Vietnam to go surfing? No, because it's just not in the culture out there. Could it be? Maybe one day, but it isn't now. Actually, surfing is kind of more of an American cultural phenomenon. West Coast, Hawaii, even down to Australia. Political decisions. Some area may have a lot of resources, say a lot of oil and gas, but for political reasons decide they don't want to start drilling for it because of the environmental concerns associated with it. For example, King Charles owned several palaces, but on a couple of them they found there actually is a natural gas underneath it, but they decided no, they're not going to start drilling for gas in near the king's castle. Just for it's a political decision that it's the reason people want to visit there is because it's a castle, not because it's an old gas field. And you can see those in East Texas and here in South Arkansas. But all these again affect choices for individuals. Levels of technological development. The first major oil fields discovered were in Pennsylvania. But oil wasn't commonly produced back then because, except your use as a lubricant because, well, what else you can use it for oil for in 1850? You don't have cars yet. You don't have the internal combustion engine yet. So as a lubricant, that's all they could use it for, but they didn't need very much of that. accessibility of some areas. That's a level of technological development. The eastern end of Union County, at the beginning of the 20th century, was very remote and very inaccessible because all the lowlands and swamps surrounding areas like Strong and Felsen fall in that area. So you really didn't get out there too much. In fact, basically that 20 mile drive today, that was an all day trip in 1900 just to get through that whole area. But as the technology improved, they figured out how to build the roadbed in the area, and eventually a nice, safe highway was built between El Dorado and Strong because of advances in technology. So by that point, it was no longer this completely inaccessible area. The categories of activity. Now, these activities depend on what something they call place utility. Place utility. This is the idea of how accessible an area is. This is how easy it is to get certain resources, certain materials, or what you can use an area for. Some of these categories of activities, you have first called primary activity. This is in economic terms. Essentially, just basic survival. Agriculture, hunter-gatherer, hunter-gatherer activities. Extractive industries. This can be areas that are very remote, still have a lot of wandering tribes in the area, but again, mostly very remote. There is some mining in this area, not primary activity areas, but not much. Agriculture, you've got mostly subsistence farming, nomadic herding. Nomadic herding. But you can have some more advanced agriculture here as well, commercial farming. Not necessarily a lot of technological activity. There can be, but not necessarily. Secondary activities. That is manufacturing. Processing. Construction. Power production. Temple, rural Union County. Yes, there's still a lot of farming in the area. Also some extractive industries. It is particularly oil and gas production. Go into the city, a lot of secondary activities. Manufacturing. There's still a few manufacturing plants here in town. Processing. You got the refinery here on the south end of town. Construction. There are a few construction firms, contractors, and so forth. They're about to do a lot of work on this highway out here. Power production. Power production, yes, you have the Panda plant here on the Callion Highway, that big natural gas plant, electrical plant. Actually, a lot of electrical power plants, they are in cities or very close to them, again, obviously for distribution purposes. But with a lot of these power plants, they have to rely on materials coming in from outside the city. Um, Oil or natural gas or uranium for a nuclear reactor or something like that. But these are secondary activities. Tertiary activities. Starting off the raw materials, then processing those materials, and then the distribution of these materials. Tertiary activities include retail, wholesale, so your farmer's market, your grocery store, your gas station, personal and professional services. Professional personal services, anything from a barber shop up to an accountant or an attorney. Ordinary activities, sellers and distributors, but going higher up the food chain, the management food chain here, information, research, management, teaching. And people gather information, and computer scientists and stuff, researchers, research of all sorts of various kinds, in a lab or just crunching numbers. And of course, management and training, which includes teaching. Your quintary activities. Executive decision makers. Popular phrase in business today is what's called the C-suite. That is everyone with a C in their title. Chief whatever, chief operating officer, chief information officer, chief executive officer, chief financial officer, things like that. People in charge of large corporations who make all the decisions for it. Now, all these are commonly are integrated by transportation and communications. Of course, gets us to the difference between city and rural areas. This part being urban geography. This is how societies operate, use space, and how people interact. Now, the world is rapidly urbanizing. The United States, for more than 100 years, most people have lived within a city limits, and that's only grown since then. Even in very remote areas of the world, even those areas are rapidly urbanizing. because there are more jobs, more opportunities in cities than there are in rural areas. Give you a couple of numbers here, urban geography. In 1800, 3% of the world population was urban. By the year 2000, at 45% urban. So people started moving to the cities very rapidly. And by today, 2024, easily half. They've got the term mega city in here. A mega city is a city of more than 10 million people in the metropolitan area. Remember, by metropolitan area, they don't just mean the main city, the central city. They also mean the immediate surrounding suburbs. In 1800, there are exactly 0. In 2001, there were 19. By 2015, 21. Largest of these megacities, Tokyo. 6.4 million people. Next, Mexico City. The city itself is the largest, but the metropolitan area, though, is second largest. 18.1 million. Bombay, India. 18.1 million.
It's in urban right now.
Yeah. Okay, so it's grown even more rapidly in the last 20 years than it has before.
It's supposed to be like 65% by 2050.
Yeah.
That's what it says.
And I would not be a bit surprised, 65% by 2050. And yeah, that's a rapid change for humanity where for most of the last several thousand years, people were living on the farms, living close to the farms. And now people are city dwellers. Farms got more specialized. We've got better at producing food, distributing it. And so now people are moving off the farms and moving to town because, well, one thing they can. Sao Paulo in Brazil, 17.8 million. Shanghai, the fifth largest, at 17 million. New York comes in at number 6. 16.6 million people living in the metropolitan area. It includes suburbs in New Jersey, across New York, even as far as Connecticut. Give you an idea just how rapidly this is changing here, where these are taking place. Urban areas between 1950 and 2000. North America, gone from 64% up to 75%. Europe, got from 56% to 73%. Now remember, that's also counting Eastern Europe, which is much more rural, much more remote, much longer than Central and Western Europe. So Central and Western Europe are very heavily urbanized. In fact, you got some of the low countries, some smaller countries like Luxembourg, Belgium, and the Netherlands. Basically, it is all city, a lot of countryside. Russia. And rapid urbanization, industrialization after World War II, going from 45% up to 73%. And it's still got a lot of tiny remote villages, but there aren't very many because just simply they're so isolated, so far away from everything, they just don't want to be so far away. The bulk of the population in Russia is in Western Russia, that whole area between Moscow and St. Petersburg. Rapid growth and rapid construction, particularly after the 1960s and into the 1970s, leads to rapid urbanization, from 12% up to 31% by year 2000. So past 50% today. Latin America, with some very large cities, going from 41% up to 74%. Africa, cities are growing very rapidly, going from 15% in 1950 up to 33% by 2000. Again, still growing rapidly. Now, in the 2000 census, there were more than 49 metropolitan areas with more than 1 million people in the United States. And there are a dozen cities now with more than 1 million people in them. Again, metropolitan areas, that's counting all the suburban areas as well. That's some vocabulary for you. There's between city area and urban area. Urban is in town. Metropolis is defined as a settlement with distinct boundaries. Cities, there are distinct city limits, the limit of its jurisdiction. Some cities that can be determined, some countries that's determined by the national government, but here in the United States, that's basically determined by the city. But as a city, there are certain services you are expected to provide in the United States. You can't provide those, and you're not expected to be able to annex those outlying areas. So settlements with distinct boundaries, cities. Suburb. Basically suburban, not quite city. As a subsidiary area. Specifically, it's a segment of a large urban complex. These call them bedroom towns because suburbs usually did not have a lot of industrial activity in their own. They were completely dependent on the larger central city for economic activity. Basically, people just buy a nice home out in the suburbs, a little quieter pace of life, things not quite as expensive in the city, and they go to work all day, come home, and basically all you do with your house is just sleep in it at night. Suburbs, bedroom communities. But again, even that bedroom community, though, is part of a larger urban complex. And suburbs themselves, they are usually incorporated areas. With distinct boundaries. Central city. That is the heart of an urbanized area. I'll take an example here. Dallas, Texas. Let's say this is Dallas. Interstates running through it. 20. It's the central city. That is the heart of that area. City of over 1 million people. but you've got some huge suburbs surrounding it. Grand Prairie right here. That is a suburb of about nearly 200,000 people. Irving, same thing. Thing is, originally, especially some of these northern suburbs here, like Richardson and Plano, that's Carrollton here. Duncanville, Seagoville. Dallas is completely surrounded by other cities. The population of all these neighboring areas combined is more than the city of Dallas itself. But Dallas is still the heart of the economic activity. All the roads, it's the main distribution center, it's the main financial center, it's the transportation center. But you go back to, like, say, 1930, 1940, 1950, all these areas, just farm towns. All these areas are largely a lot of this area is largely unincorporated. Plano in 1950 was a farm town of 1,500 people. Today it's a city of about 230,000 people. Cities grew very rapidly because Dallas was growing rapidly. And what that meant was people wanted to move out of Dallas, so they moved out to the suburbs here. Bigger houses for less money, fairly good school systems. And so more and more people started moving out here. But of course, these big companies are growing here in Dallas. They need to expand their plants, and what do? They start building little smaller plants here in some of these surrounding suburban communities. So end up developing their own economy, but still dependent on the central city. That's the central city. These are all the suburbs. And you go out this area, beyond all these towns and so forth, down there, state. You've got the exurbs. To go north of Dallas, basically, you still got, it's wall-to-wall city for miles outside of Dallas. They start getting more countryside, areas that have not been annexed by these growing cities, even out here in the suburbs. Like I said, tiny little Frisco right here. It was a city of about 4,000 people in 1990. Today it's a city of 200,000 people. Because that many people wanted to move. They're moving from the central city out here to Frisco because there's good housing. And it's close access to Dallas, all because of Dallas.
So what makes it to where someone's like, I want to put a town there?
In some cases, it's just a matter of luck. Because like some of these tiny little farm towns out here, like I say, they exist. Some of them are as old as Dallas. Some of them are brand new. Frisco, it was just a collection of small farms out here, kind of in southwestern Collin County. But not up into the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, it's largely inaccessible. Who wants to go to Frisco? I mean, who wants to go, because there's nothing there but cattle ranches. But then as these areas started growing, new roads started coming through, and they decided, just out of luck, there was that small little town there, but a bunch of developers came in and started seeing, oh, there's a bunch of empty land here. It's good water, fairly good access to the highways, or within a couple of miles of it. We can build a huge subdivision here. These huge houses for next to nothing that people are going to buy. And all I got to do is tell them, all you got to do is just drive a couple more miles. And in Dallas, that's not a big deal. because everything's 20 or 30 minutes away in Dallas. So sometimes it's just because it just happened to be there. For example, Frisco, it just happened to be there. Most people wanted to move away from the more expensive suburbs, and so Frisco was in the way. McKinney, north of Plano, it was the county seat of Collin County. That's basically all it had going for it for years was it's the center of government for Collin County. In 1990, its population was 35,000 people. It has a Central Expressway connecting it between here and 30 miles to Dallas. Well, why live in McKinney if you're working in Dallas because it's so far away? You live in Plano or Richardson, but then Plano, Richardson, they're built out. There's nowhere else to go. But there's much cheap land up in McKinney, so they started built. So some people came in, started putting in some subdivisions, and today it's a city of about 230,000 people in just 30 years. I grew up here in Grand Prairie. I go there today, I can barely recognize it. City of 70,000, I was like, that's huge by Arkansas standards, but that was small by Dallas standards. It was all kind of spread out here between north end of Interstate 30 down to Interstate 20. But everything's built out. All those fields I rode by when I was a kid, they are subdivision now. Because a lot of these developers, they buy this land on the bet that they can turn a huge profit. They can turn this all into houses that people will buy. It wasn't always successful. In the 1980s, there was a big building boom in Dallas, and the guys over leveraged themselves. They bought all this land, borrowed a bunch of money for it, but the people weren't there yet to buy it. And the bills were due, and a lot of them went bust in 1990. Some of it is just luck, and sometimes a matter of planning. Dallas is the largest city in the world not on a navigable river. Trinity River, it's there, but it's just this narrow, shallow little river. You can't get the big boats in it out there. But what really made it grow was the railroads. Had a lot of empty flat land around it. Had railroads coming in, and city developers are trying to encourage for more railroads to come in because it came at Railroad Junction. Because there's oil in the area, they start building banks, start pouring in factories, and by the 1920s, 1930s, Dallas is Big D. Actually, why hasn't that growth happened, say, Little Rock or Hot Springs? Hot Springs isn't on an interstate. It has some manufacturing, but not much. Its main economy is tourism. Always has been. Little Rock, it's growing, but not very quickly. Just simply isn't the pull to the area. I'm talking about push-pull factors. Little Rock's got a lot going for it, especially compared to the Mississippi River Delta, but there's a lot more going on in Dallas on the other side of it. So a lot of times cities are formed just because a group of people in an area just come together and they need to for convenience sake, they build a store and just a couple people start living close to the store and they build a post office and pretty soon it's an incorporated town. El Dorado started that way. There are people living on scattered farms throughout central Union County, but Matthew Rainey comes in the 1840s. His wagon breaks down, sells the goods in it, makes a little bit of money off of that because people in the area, they wanted to buy stuff. So decides to put down stakes and starts ordering more stuff, basically opens a shop. And a lot of people want to shop there, and people see he's doing well, so they start offering other services. And Before long, other businesses springing up, houses spring up, and you've got a community. And it becomes official when you get your post office. But until the oil boom in the 1920s, it was just a small little farm town, farm and timbers community, like so many others all across this area. Made El Dorado special was oil. We were right here in the middle of it, right place at the right time. Um, what would Why did it keep growing? Well, poor planning. We didn't use all that money to capitalize on attracting more business to keep things going. We just a few people decided we're making a lot of money on oil. We're just keep it limited to oil. And yeah, the city turned down a lot of shops. There were a lot of businesses because people running the city in those days decided, you know what, we don't want you around. So what happened? They went somewhere else. And then the interstate bypassed us. Oil and chemical industry wasn't quite as profitable by the 1970s. So all these places started shutting down. Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of where you're at. Living in Grand Prairie, a lot of people in that town, they didn't want anything to happen. They didn't want anything coming in. They didn't want any shops, any restaurants. They don't want liquor coming into Grand Prairie. Yeah, everybody's drunk half the time anyway, but anyway. But Dallas was just growing so fast, they couldn't stop it. Basically, progress just ran right over them, whether they wanted it to or not. Same thing with Fayetteville and Bentonville, tiny little towns up northwest Arkansas. What they have going for it, fairly centralized location across the country, for the rest of the country. University of Arkansas, which produced a lot of workers, and they got Sam Walton starts a little business. It becomes a huge business across the entire region. What happens? In the 1980s, 1990s, that's drawing people into Bentonville because they do business with Walmart and they need to sit down and have meetings with Walmart executives to basically show Walmart what kind of products they got and how they can do business with them. Plus, Walmart distribution started up in Bentonville, so they needed to build their own factories to bring products to Bentonville to send to the Walmart distribution center, where they could send it out to Walmarts everywhere. So the second largest city in the state today, Springdale, 75,000 people. So yes, that's a long answer to your question. Metropolitan area. In Dallas, the Dallas-Fort Worth area is always called the Metroplex. It's a metropolitan area. It's a large-scale functional entity. All these different communities are working together, part of one larger economic unit. A lot of different industries, a lot of different businesses, a lot of different people in that area, but they're all working together. It's a functional entity. Now, in some areas, it's several urbanized areas. Now we got Dallas and you got Fort Worth. Basically, for years they operated basically as two separate cities, but commonly connected. But Dallas's growth kind of overwhelmed Fort Worth. In North Carolina, they have what's called the Golden Triangle area. Um, Raleigh, Durham, and Winston-Salem. 3 cities, but they all act as a fairly isolated, but they all act basically as a functional unit. Now, some of these areas, the larger city can't grow because they're landlocked. For example, Dallas here, it's surrounded by suburbs, it can't expand any further. Or San Francisco. Basically, San Francisco here is on the tip of this little peninsula here. We got the Golden Gate Bridge here. But this is the limit of the city of San Francisco and San Francisco County. This is another city. And you got across the bay here all these other cities. Surrounded by huge suburbs. Oakland, San Jose, and so forth. The city of San Francisco itself cannot expand anymore because it's locked into place by water on 3 sides and suburbs on the remaining side. Boston's kind of a similar way. You also have the idea of what they call micropolitan areas. A micropolitan area is a settled area but has less than 100,000 people. Union County is sometimes listed, El Dorado is listed as a micropolitan area. We've got some smaller communities surrounding us. We're all working as a functional economic entity with El Dorado as the core of it, but it's a very small area, very small town. Smackover, Junction City, Northwood, Parker's Chapel. El Dorado, the big city by comparison. Got the idea of urbanized area. A continuously built up landscape defined by buildings and population densities. That is, you got buildings, you got people living there, an urbanized area.
So I'm assuming it's more common for them to build smaller towns around the big town. Already having the smaller towns and then just deciding to put the big town in the center.
Yeah. The big town comes first.
Yeah.
Starts as a small town, becomes a medium town, becomes a big town. Actually, those little communities surrounding Dallas, like I said, they may have been founded around the time Dallas was or just afterward, but like I say, Grand Prairie and Arlington here, they're like 15 miles away. That's a long way. Dallas grew on its own, largely independently. Grew this huge area, and then the company growth of Dallas, the suburbs started growing, especially after World War II. Have road systems that are better, land's cheaper, so people were able to move out here to the surrounding areas, like say Irving, Grand Prairie, Richardson, because it was now possible. Tiny little country roads and farm roads that have been there now, they are now major thoroughfares. And the example being, say, Hillsborough Street here. Major thoroughfare here in El Dorado, but outside of El Dorado, heading east towards Magnolia, it's country highway. But a 2-lane blacktop. But it's a major thoroughfare in other cities. Like, say, you get into some of these highways are designed to be, because they're part of existing roads. You go into Texarkana, what do you have there? What's US 82? It's 9th Street. And those little towns across East Texas, yeah, that's the main road. US 82, that was the main road, going right through the middle of Paris, Texas, but they decided to build a bypass around a little loop road. So people don't have to stop at all the stoplights they're going through. So going further and further out, it's part of an existing road, but it's either been incorporated as part of an existing road or it's becomes a bypass. So you may know US 80 going through Monroe in West Monroe. Louisville Avenue. Well, US 80 used to go all the way out here across into West Texas. Main Street, Grand Prairie. Division Street in Arlington. Towns are so tightly connected that the only way you can really tell you're going from one town to the next is by looking at the changing color of the street signs. Grand Prairie, green and white. Arlington, blue and white. Smaller towns end up growing later because of the larger cities, because of the central city. It becomes the medium for the growth of those communities. Now, compared to urbanized area, you have rural area. Areas where you don't have a lot of construction, very thinly populated, if at all. Some rural areas may be miles before you see the next house or the next person. But sometimes in rural areas, you have these little unincorporated areas, a few little collections of a few houses. Sometimes, like say, maybe just a few houses built on some old farmland that was owned by one family, and they're all related to each other. Or some settlement that might have started out to be a town, but just never quite made it. Just couldn't get enough people to get that critical mass. Say just a few people living within a mile or so of a church or something, or an old general store. Rural area. All this is different from what they call a frontier area. This is was most commonly used describing areas in the 1800s in the United States. There's actually a term used by the United States Census Bureau to find as an area of less than one person per square mile. There isn't a lot of frontier areas left in the United States, but there are a few. Basically, portions of the Dakotas and Montana, Wyoming, portions of Alaska are considered to be frontier areas. Just simply no one living there. But other areas, though, they have are much more heavily settled and very densely populated. Gentrification. It's also kind of controversial. It's basically the idea of turning a slum area, an economically depressed area, into middle and upper class neighborhoods. Basically, moving it up. You see this happening in areas of Chicago, New York City, and some larger areas where you had these very economically depressed areas for a while. Well, the thing is, crime-ridden areas, largely abandoned, but some people say, especially in very high-priced housing areas, people start buying these abandoned houses because they can get them for comparatively cheap. And they refurbish them, flip them, maybe sell them, or maybe live there. Basically, all of a sudden, you've got a few nice houses in what have been a really bad neighborhood. And what happens through gentrification is, because suddenly you have people with a little bit more money in an area, some businesses start moving back into the area. And because you have a few houses that are nice now, prices start going up. Property values start going up. And what happens if property values start going up in an area? Property taxes start going up. So it meant the people that were living there this whole time in areas where rents are comparatively low, property taxes are comparatively low. All of a sudden, property taxes skyrocketing. You can't afford to live there anymore. Areas where the poor were able to live, even though it's not a very nice neighborhood, it was affordable and it was home. They can't afford to live there anymore. It's become controversial in some areas. So, as urbanization and economics, go ahead and stop there. We'll start talking about certain political concepts like colonialism and international relations in a bit more next time. And move and talk a little more about political ideologies and economic systems and kind of how they affect the development of areas. All right, if there's nothing else, we'll call it a day.